hear of IoT, the forecast number for connections ranges in the trillions. Yeah. And this, of course, because of that, sounds like the business to be in. And yet, so few have actually made a bold move in this direction. So quite frankly, these numbers are intimidating. Yet you are operating successfully in this space. Tell us more about Sqwidnet.
Okay. Thank you. I think Sqwidnet, from why are we moving into IoT and why we is because I think we're context-driven. I think we're very well aware of what it takes to succeed in South Africa, and we're trying to build our business around those constraints. So, with South Africa, we are both first world and third world, a tale of two cities. So if you're building a business, you need to make sure that you're catering for the entire market. So I think that's what we're trying to do. The minister earlier on talked about ecosystems and used the word ecosystems quite a lot. And I think we try to have that into how we go into the market. So when we think about IoT and we think about what's the minimum that we need for an IoT solution to work, we realize that we are one of at least 4 components. I usually like to call that the A, B, C, D of IoT, where the A is for the application that you would view your data on. The B would be for big data, or the back end where you store that data. And then we are the C, we are the connectivity provider in that mix. And then, of course, we need to get to our assets in the field. And so that's what the D would stand for. So I think when we looked at IoT, we thought we can't do all of that. But what can we do from a dark fiber point of view? What strengths do we have? And you've heard from Thinus, open access is a very big strength of ours. So we thought we want to find a technology out in the market that can work within that. And we think Sigfox is very well suited to us. So since 2017, what we've been busy with when we got the license is we thought let's first of all build a network that we can rely on, that we can go up to existing technology providers and offer them, let's call it a shared economy service when it comes to a network, so that they can go off and sell IoT practically rather than the theory of IoT. To that end, we've gotten to over 90% of the country. I think IoT focuses a lot on a country's ills, a country's challenges. And in South Africa, one of those challenges is assets that are in transit or assets that are moving. And so we also made sure that when we build that network, we cover roads in terms of South Africa. I think we cover about 144,000 kilometers when it comes to paved roads. But that's not the full story. We cover over 500,000 kilometers of gravel. And when it comes to that South African context, I think if you leave that out, you leave that much of your market out. So we try and cover that. And we don't have the kind of money where we can spend what we think is the IoT budget, and then next year find out we need to spend a little bit more. So we wanted to partner with somebody who, when you deploy this IoT solution, no matter where you go in the world as a business, you don't have to rethink that. And we think Sigfox, because it's in 60 countries, covering 1 billion people throughout the world, is very well suited to our constraints.
Thank you for that. So may I invite you to dispel a notion, please, within this ecosystem and shared economy, is there money to be made?
Definitely. I think...
As a shareholder, we really hope so.
Yeah. When the shareholder... Yeah, exactly. But I think
the benefit he's got, he's built his network, he's done.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Our fiber players must keep on investing every year. He's done it. He's covered the whole country.
Yeah, and I think it would be difficult to answer that question if you're a technology looking for a problem. So I rather think, is there value? And can we, at the very least, articulate that value? And we believe that this is the world of moving all decisions in a business to digital. You have stuff that is within a complex, within a building, and there's stuff that's not in a building. And are you willing to drive your bakkie out 5-6 kilometers to check if the fence is closed? Or at the price of less than a tank of petrol, are you willing to go with our solution? And so in that space, we believe that not only is it a viable business for, I was using agriculture, but is a viable business in all industries.
And who within this ecosystem especially are your competitors, or is there one strong identity of a competitor?
I always struggle to answer this question, I must say.
I do apologize for asking.
And that's because at the heart of South Africa, I don't know if we are a competitive nation by nature. I know that by profession we're forced to pick a side. We go in, which bank are you with, which hospital group are you with, etc. And what we are trying to do when it comes to building these digital businesses that are in demand in a country where our life expectancy is lagging by 20 to 30 years, to more think about what can we achieve collaboratively rather than competitively. But having said that, from a technology point of view, I more think about what technologies could substitute us rather than what technologies are we competing against. And from a Sigfox point of view, you can use Sigfox, or you could use LoRa, or you could use Wi-Fi, or you could use RFID. And then from a network point of view, somebody who's giving you an IoT network throughout the country, then we don't believe we have a competitor, because we're trying to create an ecosystem where everybody's allowed to play in there. It gives the customers choice, and because each technology, the world isn't a nail and we're a hammer. There's various solutions. There was somebody who joked about hitting a mosquito with a hammer is the first time you'll understand that a hammer doesn't solve everything. So we think of ourselves as if we're in a bakery, and in that bakery there's croissants, and there's panini, and there's ciabattas, and there's all the fancy. We're the brown bread. We're a good staple that you need when you just need to fill up every day.
From healthy choices in IoT, moving over to Vumatel, Dietlof. Now, you are like the Braveheart of the telco industry. Really, really bold play. And Vumatel is a force to be reckoned with. You are challenging the market, and you certainly didn't choose a conservative route to market. Tell us more about Vumatel and why you're making the kind of moves you're making.
Thank you. I think it was an exciting 4 years, the last 4 years, and it was started by two entrepreneurial guys that were really the mavericks, I think, of the industry, and we did things in South Africa that I think nobody thought possible. I mean, even if you look at OpenServe and their strategy on the old technology, nobody really thought that we could get fiber to the homes in such a scale, and we did it. I mean, we started in Parkhurst 4.5 years ago. Today we got 600,000 homes passed, and SADV is now currently reporting into us just to get the scale right and to actually get the synergies going. But it's only the beginning. I mean, if you look at the market and the home markets, and we listen to the minister and the chairman speaking this morning, I mean, there's 16.8 million homes in South Africa, of which 2.2 are really formal type of a middle to low LSMs. And then you got like 8.6 million informal low LSM homes, and then you got about 9.6 total informal homes. So I think the market is just absolutely there, and we luckily in this position where we've got that critical mass. So we got the 600,000 homes. We're building like crazy at the moment. So we on a good month we're delivering 20,000 homes. So that's basically, so we're doubling our network every year. I don't think we'll double it this year because we've got 600,000, but for the last 2-3 years, we've been pushing 200,000 homes a year. And I just think it's the beginning of it, because we have to tweak the models in ways where we can a little bit disrupt more, but support more. So actually get the growth to really go the way we want it to go. And that's why we're doing all these exciting things. And I think the merger with CIVH is exactly what we needed at the right time. And I think it was right for DFA, Sqwidnet, and myself, or Vuma, because you need this big backing. I mean, consistency and future vision is the critical thing, and that has to be backed up by financial support. And to have a big group behind you in the market that we're in currently, disrupting the industry, and if you look at the fiber connectivity to whatever you look at technology in the future, this is exactly where we have to play. And I think the merger came absolutely, or the acquisition came exactly at the right time.
Certainly making the right calls there based on the information that was shared with us from Kieran this morning as well, and Tower Exchange, and the observations they're making as to what set of assets do you need to have in your portfolio now. So is it fair to ask, seeing that you play at a metro level largely, who does Vumatel compete with?
I think at the moment we're competing with ourselves, really, and I'm super competitive. So I'm one of those South Africans that's super competitive. So I love competition.
We're playing just now.
But I think competition is good, and I think you're seeing it now. You're seeing a lot of players coming into the market, and suddenly there's momentum, and everybody's talking about fiber. People realize that they have to take the old technology out of the ground and replace it with fiber. So suddenly you're seeing a huge push into the market where the excitement is and the momentum is just pushing the technology. So firstly, I think we're definitely competing with ourselves to get speed to market, to create quality networks, to create a super customer experience at the end of the day. I think then secondly, I'm definitely competing with OpenServe. I mean, the incumbent. I mean, they're in the ground. They've been in the country for years and years and years. They're sitting with an old technology that they have to replace. In a way, I'm complementary also with them because they've got a very strong ISP that's also on our network. So I think in a way there's a lot of competition out there. I think there's smaller players that's coming up with good ideas. But I just think the competition is fueling the market, and I think the competition will drive the building of this industry forward over the next 5 to 10 years.
You've just made me actually think of open access, mentioning the example of working with an OpenServe, built on the premise of open access, and I think, Phathizwe, that came through the model that you rely on as well within the ecosystem. So I just want to pick up on that point of open access. Certainly, it seems to be articulated very clearly, locally and globally, why this model works and why we need to follow it. But I would even maybe go so far as to say, certainly we demonstrate within the industry and in government an understanding of that model. But yet somehow, and perhaps it's perceptions, we see multiple bulls, and in some case I even pick up the term overbulls being used. And yet in other cases, especially amongst the operator group, there's almost an invisible, unspoken reluctance to adopt open access models. Is this a perception? Is this really a problem? Phathizwe, what is your take on that?
Yeah, when we went out, when I speak from a we DFA point of view, went out and thought we want to play in this IoT connectivity space, I think there was a lot of options that were on the table that I think we'd consider more like trade-offs. Do we go proprietary? Do we build and keep it closed? Almost that Apple kind of world, or do you go Microsoft where you're a services company and you're dictating a standard? And open access for us was an answer. It's an answer that we love because it allowed us to build up to scale in terms of what South Africa needs and be 5 years ahead, I think, of the world in terms of how we're using technology, that leapfrogging. And the first thing it allowed us to do is it gave us the ability to tap into existing players who have access to capital that is not just our access to capital. when we started, I think we only had, if we did have in the country, Microsoft Azure as a cloud platform. Now we've got Amazon Web Services, you've got Google Cloud, very interested in terms of the country. Also on the devices side, when we went in, I think there were about 150 devices. That would mean we would have to build a device each time we heard of a unique African context use case. But now we're sitting in a world where we've got about 745 devices that we have access to, that our partners have access to. And then there's just the reality that the asset that we are trying to go to connect to the internet isn't done. That asset is an asset that that company 10 years, 20 years ago, be it a water meter, invested in, and they have no intention to rip that out before they realize that benefit. And what open access does is it allows all of these companies to creatively, innovatively come up with solutions that we can retrofit and almost extend the life of that asset rather than come up with another kind of CapEx model. So I think open access for us was the answer to why we are where we are now.
And Thinus, earlier on you mentioned self-provisioning may be the bigger item here, but just focusing on InfraCo, Dark Fiber Africa, is there such a thing as overbuild?
I think DFA can definitely claim the title as the pioneer of open access. And I think because of that, we've enabled a lot of other players in the supply chain to grow with us. So if you look at our top 15 customers, there's probably 5 or 6 ISPs in there that didn't exist 6 or 7 years ago. That's now really embracing this open access principle. But there will always be overbuild. There will always be duplication of infrastructure. You can't stop it. I think that's good also from a competition perspective. Otherwise, you can end up being a monopoly again. I think that my opinion is that Africa can only support probably 3 or 4 infrastructure networks. That includes towers and maybe data centers also. But to have duplicate infrastructure is good for competition. Keeps us honest.
So open access clearly embraced, right from DFA onwards into Sqwidnet and Vumatel. When we visualize this framework of open access, clearly government is an important stakeholder. And at national government level, we often hear, well, we've set the policy that then needs to be implemented. So the question I have is, bearing in mind we have a 3-tier government system in South Africa. We've heard the leader CEO from Salga speak with us this morning. The question really simply is, at a practical level, when it comes to open access and shared infrastructure, how do you encounter this at a practical level? Dietlof, may I ask for your take on this, please?
Just to back on the overbuild side, I think there's so much to build still in South Africa. There's so much to do out and build to places where you don't have fiber. So I think we're a little bit protected there in the beginning. I think the people even the FNOs and the MNOs even know exactly that they must cover where there's nothing now. I mean, the key success factor of this business model is uptake at the end of the day, and it just becomes so difficult if you overbuild and try and get the uptake figures. So at the end, there's always a return on investment on the fiber that you put into the ground. So I think that's the first key thing for me on open access. That goes for infrastructure as well as the service layer, which is basically the ISP layers. I think the more ISPs that are empowered, the more people compete on customer experience and service, which is an end customer type of an outcome, which is super critical to the service that we're giving. On government side, I think we in the industry where the regulation is quite light. I think we came through a competition case now where they really looked at every angle on competition, every angle of the law, and I think it was quite well done. So I will compliment that. I think where there's a little bit of problems is definitely on the efficiencies of getting some approvals. And I think we did mention it earlier this morning as well. I think from a government point of view, it's aligning the policies with the execution at the end. And that's for me the critical thing. That's where you'll always get the break in the line where somebody plays a different political game to actually achieve something else. But I think if people realize what the end goal is for the country and development and getting the digital divide to close out, I think that's the key thing. So what you're still seeing today is issues with way leaves, where way leaves are delayed. It's really, where it should be a seamless process for us to actually complete infrastructure. It is not. And weird enough, in some municipalities, it's more difficult than other municipalities. And I think if we can streamline some of those processes end to end to achieve the objective of the policymakers, I think we'll get a far way.
And certainly we have seen more ISPs being enabled through DFA taking to market the offers you do. Phathizwe, a practical walkthrough, how does the effectiveness of open access models affect you with regards to policy saying that, it's done the right thing so that it happens correctly on the ground? Or in the air, in your case?
In the air. When government's got a tough job, and I think every once in a while we make the problem sound so simple, so that we can go, but why don't they just do this thing, the normal solution? And I think the problem that they have on their side is, you want to be ethical. You want to make sure you're covering the greater good. And so you've got something like a tender system that makes sure, you're fair all the time, you're fair. Here we're dealing with technology, not even our technology, just technology in general, that is being pushed by Moore's law in however way you understand it. My simple way is, a transistor 2 years from now will have, or a board will have double the amount of transistors on it than you have now. What that translates to for me personally is I'm paying the same amount of money for double the speed, or I'm paying half for the speed that I'm happy with. If you've got an iPhone 6, it's perfect. Don't upgrade. But when it comes to government and that tender process, by the time the tender is approved, either we have not delivered the service in terms of service delivery, or the technology that we're putting in is old and is now unethical to be kind of putting in. And on the other side, you run with technology and you run at the speed of technology, and then you exclude a majority of the population. So I think even in the government context, they have to figure out what model works that has that open access principle that is more aligned with all of us. Because what we're finding on the ground is we are now able to bring the cost to 10 times lower than we had in just the general M2M space. When it comes to connectivity, we are paying 10 times less the price than we did in a short period as 3 years ago. And the capital outlay that all of the companies that I spoke about have put into the ground is making them to start producing for each area, water meters, agriculture, mining, lots of solutions that can go out and help the people who need it the most, which is people who don't have access to service. But we'll only move as fast as the slowest link, and I shudder to admit that when it comes to public sector, they're becoming the slowest link in terms of us delivering that service.
Thank you for being so candid on the actual experience that's impeding growth. I suppose it translates to that, and we can't call it out by that, except for, yes, it being an impediment to growth. Yeah. Hopefully, one of the outcomes, and we saw this morning start with a good gesture, being the leaders in the industry sign up, and let's hope we end on that crescendo as well, with some momentum being created to address the waiting periods that you speak of. So I want to shift to the overall theme of this conference, 5G. It's here. So your rapid fire response, please. How far is commercial 5G for us in South Africa? 3 to 5 years, 5 years, Thinus?
Rain is here, so it's already there. So, but I think big rollout 2 to 3 years.
Phathizwe?
More pessimistic and say 5 years.
3 to 5.
Dietlof? 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
What are we going to see in 3 to 5 years? That's.
No, I think you're going to see. I've got my opinion on it, but I think you'll see real 5G in the main metros in South Africa. I think the fiber that we're doing, if you look at the whole solution that we offer in the market, I mean, and you heard it this morning, I mean, fiber is absolutely the backbone of it. It's totally complementary, the two services. You can't really do 5G without fiber, and you need 5G to really grow the market in future. So what I see is really big metro push on 5G. Supported by our fiber networks, because I mean 80% of that 5G rollout cost is fiber effectively, and I see small cells all over the place, not like what you're seeing today, where it's like a beaming solutions type of scenarios. It'll really be small cells talking to one another, zero latencies, and it needs a super fast, good fiber network to support that.
Absolutely, and you know, from the position of sitting in this chair, it gives me great comfort to hear you call those numbers, because based on the latest GSMA report on 5G outlook for Africa, enterprise segment is going to drive the uptake of 5G, and localized fixed wireless access is certainly going to be one of the primary 5G use cases. So sitting in the right positions in your business right now. So now up close and personal. Funniest project moments that made you laugh. Who's going to go first? Well, we saw Tina smile. Somebody please capture that moment.
Hey.
Okay, funniest project moments. Volunteers?
Okay, right in the beginning, we were linking Joburg and Pretoria. It's one of the core routes. And we couldn't get whaleys for a piece of route between Joburg and Durban, and it's in Midrand, and Midrand was not so overbuilt as it is now, so it was still almost looked like a farm. And between Sanral, Gauteng Road, Joburg Metro, and Tshwane Metro, they couldn't decide who must issue the whaley, and we were standing still. So our team thought it would be innovative to build under camo nets, and maybe that nobody could see them. So they deployed the whole camo net. And they trenched underneath the camo nets for a day or two, and then obviously they were caught, which caused a bit of an issue, but at least we got the whale leaf eventually.
So I wouldn't ask what happened to those pioneering installation staff. Any other funny stories to share?
Sure. You know, the technology that we use, one of the things I love about it is how simple it is. I've been able to put together an IoT solution in under an hour, and I'm not an engineer, and I'm not anywhere near technical. And so it starts to stretch your imagination in terms of all the things you could possibly use this for. And we're sitting with one of our shareholders one day, and he says, "Oh, this thing is amazing. What type of battery life are you going to get off it?" We're like, 5 years at the very least. Even this little thing that we've built here, he says, "Come out to my farm, please, put it onto one of my water troughs, give me a smart water trough." Because the number of times I have to drive out to that water trough only to find that there's water, and then I drive out again, and I think that water must have dried up the next day that I was there. I just need something to kind of give me an indication of real time, where's my water levels. So we went out there, we put this installation in, and it was very smooth. It cost him way less than 2,000 Rand to have this thing there, and we thought, oh, we've done a fantastic job. And we got back to his farm, and we showed him on his device, and he could see the water levels. He was the most happy person. And the next day he phones us and says, "The water dried up." "What do you mean the water dried up?" He says zero, but the thing was full, and we were there. No, so we go out, drive out there, and it's gone. We think it's been stolen. Someone must have jumped in, and it's a big farm. I don't know where you jump in, but someone must have stolen this device. But I said, "But you told me this thing has got location-based services. Can you not look on your system and tell me where this thing is?" We're like, "Oh, well, we go check." And sure enough, this thing's still alive. It's still transmitting and saying that it's empty. So we kind of tracked the area where it was around, and the only life that we saw there was a troop of baboons. So I think it's safe to say that that's the first African troop of baboons that have a smart water solution.
Looking out to their own interests.
I think we also, we're busy deploying now in Mitchell's Plain, so we've got 15,000 homes now passed in Mitchell's on a prepaid model. But as we started Mitchell's, I mean, my contractor call line and the guys are here. I mean, this is actually a contractor story. But as we started deploying the fiber, I mean, obviously there was this hype in Mitchell's, you know, what we're doing. And people were some negatives and positives, but people were super positive about it in the community. And at the end, they realized, listen, but we are putting fiber down, you know. So basically, the contractors were explaining to the people that, listen, we're actually putting fiber down. And this one morning, this little girl came out of the house and she walked to one of the contractors and she asked him for the Wi-Fi password. So that was for us you know, because we're changing the thing. She thought immediately there'll be obviously total Wi-Fi coverage throughout Mitchell's, you know, but quite good.
Age profile of customers certainly becoming interesting. Look, from the lighter moments in the boardroom, and I'm so glad there are those, to the funding, because you very quickly chirped up when we spoke of funding earlier on, Tina. So you have the enviable role of having the wallet, that's a larger access, an access to a larger pool of funding, but also the unenviable task of how this gets dished out. Some in-house research showed that infra companies are trading at 2 times 6 and more multiples, higher multiples than operators. And again, you know, it speaks to the business you're in. In fact, if I just explode into one more level of detail on that, we did some benchmarks on using forward EBITDA. And near-term multiples, you know, because of the industry you're in. If I look at telcos in the US market, the range is between, say, 20.7 all the way up to 24.1. And on the infra companies, fiberco companies in particular, 8.6 to about 9.8. So again, repeating that you're in a very exciting space within the telco industry. So making the right investments must occupy a top priority. And we've heard about the diversity that the stable brings in each of the respective companies. And you have to ensure hitting those target returns. So what is your equity story? Let me start first at mothership level with DFA. What is your equity story?
I think from an investor point of view, they require 2 aspects, 2 elements. First one is growth, and then the second one is cash flow. So from our perspective, we still see significant opportunities to grow the business. So we're not going to slow down in terms of investing. We do feasibilities when we make investments, so we make sure that we make the required return for the shareholders. And because the bulk of our income is annuity income, 90% of our income is now annuity income, we've got a very predictive cash flow forecast that we can provide shareholders. So I think the combination of both solid growth and not as fast as Phathizwe is going to grow, but still solid growth, and then a good positive cash flow makes us attractive for potential investors.
And within Sqwidnet, Phathizwe, what is your equity story?
I suppose, you know, with a lot of the connectivity...
No more capex, eh? No more
capex.
You've heard it in front of all the delegates today. Please don't note that down.
When it comes to this space, when it comes to infrastructure, I think one of the things that we're proud about when we look at the type of business that we're in is we're one of the first digital infrastructure companies, if you kind of call it that. And one of the key indicators to that is exactly to what Thinus is pointing out, is the capital outlay is not ongoing. In fact, we are done at Sqwidnet. So from here, you know, our equity story really it's a capital, it's almost a zero capital game going forward now. We had the fortune of having Africa Analysis take a look at the African market, and in particular the South African market. Just to reinforce, you know, we get these numbers, you know, 17 billion, 25 billion by 2020, and every time Gartner speaks or somebody speaks from the international platform, it's so big, we ask ourselves, but how much of that is in South Africa? And what Africa Analysis discovered is we were at 17 million IoT devices last year, expected to grow to 25 million this year. But by 2028, we're looking at a figure of 106 million devices, IoT devices. And all of them are projecting in our space, which is the low power space, that a majority of those devices are going to be coming from a network or going to need connectivity that's from a network like ours. So I think that would be a very compelling reason to buy our shares if we ever land up there, right?
Giving us a
You're not
glimpse
selling,
into the future. So Dietlof, look, I'm almost afraid to ask you in case Thinus again says no to your upcoming CapEx request. But the equity story of Vumatel, please.
I think if I can, we just came through an equity story with the acquisition. And basically what we saw was every rand we put into the ground, I mean, we got a 3 rand return on, basically, effectively. The model that we have to look at is obviously is we drive the whole model on first homes passed. I think that is the capex leg of it, to see what the peak funding is by in the period up to 2026. I think that's what we're working on now. We hit peak funding in about 2023, 2024. And that's another 10 billion we're going to put into the ground in South Africa to get to 1.5 million homes at least. And I think that's the big thing for me on efficiencies. Obviously, that's critical. I mean, where we have to drive down the cost and the efficiencies, the way we do things, to stay disruptive in the market, we have to continuously change the business model. Free cash is obviously always a problem for big infrastructure companies like us, and that's where I say the big machine and the big engine of CIVH behind us is assisting with that. And then it's uptake. I mean, it's a lot of companies are maybe focusing on that 1-to-3 ratio on dig plus return. I truly believe that we have to look at the uptake side of the business that drives this business model, that keeps ticking it over, because that's the heart of it. Obviously, ARPU on the one side, average revenue per user, and then obviously the take-up is absolutely critical. And then the heart of it is the customer experience side, because we're moving into that whole service, 600,000 homes, customer experience side that we'll have to up to a world-class level to become a force to be reckoned with. But keep the disruptive side of the business in there.
So we're heading towards the last question. So again, I will invite you, if you would like to ask any questions or pick up on any of the discussion points, please hold that thought or note for a short while. The last question is, we are now at the FTTX Council Conference of 2025. And we're all sitting in the same chairs at, well, more or less at the fireside agenda program item, because the fireside conversation of 2019 was such a big hit. So we've been invited again in these same chairs. What would you be sharing with us in 2025? And you called the numbers, we're going to have 5G by then as well. What would you be sharing with us about the achievements of DFA, Sqwidnet, and Vumatel?
I think our shareholders would like to see some dividends by then. So, but I think it's 6 years from now, so we've only been basically in operations for really trenching for 7-8 years, and there's still a lot to do. So our focus probably will remain the same, and from a DFA perspective, to focus on rolling out fiber, maybe going more into the rural areas. I think we've built models now around that we can do it successfully. To become more innovative and to be more disruptive. I think there's still a lot that we can do to disrupt the market and to play a more significant role and to help the country from a socio-economic development point of view to get fiber to everybody. Our reason for existence is to connect Africans to the world and to each other. So that will remain our motto, and we'll drive that strategy very hard. Hopefully by then we'll be done. So.
And you will continue on that investment that's already been made, Phathizwe. Yeah. So your Sqwidnet's achievements in 2025.
I think I like that that view of why we kind of exist, which is to connect Africa. So I think 2025, what kind of Africa will we be sitting in is what I think I'll be very proud to be sitting in if we have added any value at that. Currently, we're sitting at a life expectancy in South Africa of 62 years. And you know, when you translate life expectancy, it's all about your quality of life and what are the factors that we can influence to improve quality of life. And I think one of those is connectivity. Every report that you read, when we move to a space, just like water, you know, when we move from a space of, and I'll steal from Dietlof, he once told me the story of when it comes to water, you know, you walk over to a well for a village and you get water. That village now has water available. But when you move to plumbing the water into each and every person's household, that community now has abundant water. And the difference between abundant water and available water is significant. I think when it comes to connectivity and where we'll be, or where we'd like to be in 2025, is a space where we'll be producing abundant connectivity. And what that should do is at least let us experience Moore's law even in this life expectancy, maybe moving us from where we are, which is 62 years, to 70 years, 72 years at that point. Asia Pacific did it in one lifetime, and I think we'll just have started our turning this continent around in one lifetime as well. And then I think from IoT, one of the things you'll be seeing from us is disposable IoT. I think
Disposable IoT?
that will be a thing.
Tell us more.
When it comes to things like opening envelopes, today, you know, you rely on a track and trace service based on a human being who asked the individual who got the envelope to sign here and through your mobile. But that's not really. You don't know if that envelope was ever opened or not opened. Disposable IoT kind of makes that possible, where we can have smart envelopes. And that is a Western world or first world solution. Imagine the type of solutions that we will have off that technology in 2025.
Great stuff out there. Vumatel, what would you be
touched,
sharing with us?
I would love to see, I said 1.6 million homes by 2026. I think we can push it to 2 million homes, 40% market share. So you're looking at a total homes connected of 5-6 million in South Africa. I think that's what we should see as an industry. I would love to see that we really connect the schools. We're doing it currently, but really connect every school with a fiber line across South Africa. We can look at clinics in time. We can look at libraries, because there's quite a lot of libraries still in some of these areas of informal areas. But I really see that we've breached that digital divide and really give access to the people that really need it. And I think if we can get it 50% right, it'll make a huge impact. So with the coverage, with backing it on the DFA networks, with all the IoT intelligence we put on top of the metro networks and the fiber to the home side, I really think we're playing in a space where we can transform the digital side of South Africa.
And now, moving over to the audience, are there any questions, comments? May I move the session to the audience to take one or two questions? We have a hand in the front and one to my left. May we have a microphone, please, or is somebody, do you have a roving mic? Okay, maybe ask and I'll repeat so long. Or if the sound engineer wants to pick up the mic on this podium. Okay, we have a roving mic making its way over to you now. The wireless does need to be brought to you in this instance. So it's just making its way on foot. Okay.
Hi, I'm Ankit Agarwal from Sterlite STL. The question is really thinking about the link between the wireless costs, which is still very expensive in terms of wireless data in South Africa in particular. And then you're getting more and more competition. We're talking of overbuilds as well, but very good competition now happening on the wireline side. Do you see a dramatic shift? We're talking about 2025. So do you see a dramatic shift in terms of cost per GB really coming down? We talk of Moore's law, etc. And how do you see that split in terms of usage between wireline and wireless between now and 2025?
Thank you for that question. Let's take the other question and then get back to the panel to respond. Does the person who put his hand up still have the question, the second question? Okay, here we are. I like this. You came to the mic.
No problem. Greg from Smart Technology. In terms of your factoring with the 2025 future thinking, what is your opinion on 5G and fixed line versus the 5G equivalent that's coming out now? How is that playing into your financial models, your decisions, your cost rentals per month to customers? We hear that line rental installation prices are going up. So is there going to be a push towards 5G, things like that? Have you been focusing on that model? I know DFA has entered into a wireless model now also. How is that? Is there a big growth plan for that, possibly in the 5G space?
Thank you for those questions. Who would like to pick them up?
Do you want to take the first one?
Okay, I think the difference really between why I think it's all about context, right? And the difference between wireless and wired. There's a business case for the two of them, and they will coexist for a very, very long time. What we are seeing in the wireless space is a lot of the technologies, like the technology that we're using, are the technologies that have taken advantage of that Moore's law, that are becoming mainstream, and where the assets are at that point where we can replace them, we're seeing a lot of companies starting to take advantage of dropping their total cost of enablement from a very from what they had then to new technology, quite basically. When we look at the trend between or within the wireless space, we are starting to see that a lot of what was traditionally GSM or what was traditionally wireless LAN, those where the assets are coming to an end are starting to switch where the context is right to something that is of a much more longer battery, because that kind of lasted for 3-4 years, and now they have to change it again, and in 3-4 years they'd have to change it again. So when you jump to a low power network, you can start extending that to 7 years, 10 years, and then at that point, we'll be looking out and going, what other disruptions are there that are, lower or no power or whatever the word is. So we do see that trend, and I think it is a healthy trend. I think if we were all carrying the very first Nokias that I saw as our primary devices right now, we'd have had an injustice from the manufacturers. So similarly in the wireless space, people have to migrate.
I think if I can also touch on the pricing a little bit is if you look at fiber to the home, if you look at the package, most of those packages are uncapped at the moment. So I think that's the first thing. So I'll get there. The second thing is it's an open access model, so you've got lots of ISPs playing in this. So competition is super open. I mean, you look at our ISPs. I mean, 80% of our revenue makes up. There's only 8 ISPs that actually make up that 80% of the revenue, but there's 65 ISPs on our total network. So if we go back to data and abundance of data, I think that will automatically play into any reduction of cost in time if you look at it per measurable gigabyte or a meg. So what you're seeing is, if you take Mitchell's for instance now, I mean, you're getting a 399 package. It's a little bit of a different, you only got one option there, but it's a 20 meg service. It's a little bit contended, but there's 4, 5, 6 people in that house where they're paying currently for mobile data 100 Rand a gig, the first gig, I mean, it's 500 rand a gig. Suddenly, it becomes uncapped for a different price range. So affordability, value, all that will happen definitely. As devices obviously start pushing more data consumptions, what you'll see is, and that's how our business model works, is what you'll see is people will start upselling and upscaling automatically. My opinion still, I'm arguing with some of the banks and the investors, is still, I think, in time, your value will come down a little bit. We are in Africa. It's a developing market. I don't see ARPUs going up, except maybe a multi-choice model, but it gets to a point where you have to bring it down. I think in time, there will be a market where even that will come down a little bit. But your average ARPU per user or household, I believe, will still stay the same, effectively. And that's how I predict it going forward. But your abundance of data, the usage of data, the volume of data it'll multiply by 100 times. Mobile was never built to substitute this. And I think we're one of the only countries in the world where we don't have a full converged service in. That's the first thing. The second thing is we had an amazing mobile network. I mean, covered with huge coverage. I mean, that could compare to the best in the world, if not the best in the world. But in time, the cost actually killed them. So what happened is data prices had to come up. But we got used to the coverage on mobile. If you go to Europe today, I mean, there's Wi-Fi in trains, there's Wi-Fi's in the bars, and there's mobile in the trains, there's even Wi-Fi in the trains. So the kids only use mobile data when there's no fixed or Wi-Fi solution. So and the only reason why they're using it is to stay connected, always, not missing out type of scenario. And I think that's what we're going into. So convergence, I will play a big role in time, and that's the 5G question as well. I see a very big convergence type of a play. It doesn't matter how it happens, but there has to be some mix between how we get the fiber networks entrenched in the mobile networks.
In closing, any last comments?
Sorry.
Go.
Sorry, I think one of the things that we have kind of chatted about, but I do like to continuously stress is how unserviced South Africa is, and even though the technologies that we're talking about, can come into our metros and come into our businesses that are in cities and make quite a difference in terms of efficiencies, we have a lot of the country that needs this service. We had, I think we had 140 service protests by June this year. In 2016, there was only 130-something protests, right? So that's in half a year, we've had all the protests that we had, translating to almost a protest every second day. And those people aren't just protesting because they've got nothing else to do. They really need these services. So when I think about all of these 5G and I think about all the technologies that we are very excited about, and a lot of us geek out about what is possible, we shouldn't forget what that will do to our GDP if we just address that unserviced market. Just currently, with my rudimentary working out, we can unlock 100 billion rand by just taking our services, converting them to something affordable, and going out to these rural areas. So I think from a group point of view, but particularly from a Sqwidnet point of view, that's one of the reasons we believe we need to connect Africa for, because it will make that kind of difference.
We're the only industry, I think, that can help South Africa to get to a 2-3% growth rate. It's not going to be the mining sector. It can only be telecoms. And I think we, as a telecom sector, must stand together and support the minister. I was really impressed by courage this morning when we met with her, what they plan. And we can see what the president is trying to do with his fourth industrial revolution drive. And as an industry, we must just support them, back them, and they will make things happen. I'm convinced about that.
And certainly we're seeing an investor sentiment where capital markets are clearly allocating a premium to digital infrastructure players, and you bring the wealth of diversity within your portfolio, including that. So I really want to thank you for taking the time out to have this discussion today, conversation, and very inspirational story coming through from the leadership of CIVH. Please join me to thank our speakers today.
Thank you.